Madeline Harper's phone vibrated violently against the glass cafe table, making her latte tremble and spill a thin line of foam onto the wood grain. Her thumb hovered over the screen before she saw the notification. Transaction approved, $310,000 Rolls-Royce purchase. Card ending 4529. She froze mid-breath, the morning sun slicing across her face through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the downtown cafe, reflecting in the polished chrome of the espresso machine, and she noticed the faint scent of roasted beans mixing with the acrid tang of panic rising in her chest. A waiter paused mid-step, eyes flicking between her and the slick black sedan outside, engine idling, as if the city itself was holding its breath. She swiped the screen, scrolling through her bank account, tracing the trail of charges with rapid, precise movements, fingers tapping the screen like a metronome counting down humiliation, when Logan Pierce's name appeared in bold beside the charge, and the small bell above the cafe door jingled as he and a woman with perfect blonde curls and a silk scarf stepped out from the rain-slicked sidewalk, her heels clicking sharply on the marble entryway outside, a sound that punctuated Madeline's vision, pulling her back to their wedding photo on the wall in her apartment, her hand still on his, the gold band glinting under warm candlelight, and the memory fractured instantly with the sight of him now flaunting wealth and indulgence she had unknowingly funded. She pressed her lips together, tracing the edge of the table with her knuckle, her eyes scanning the reflection of herself in the chrome espresso machine, lips tight, posture rigid, imagining the subtle steps she would take to regain control, the curvature of her spine shifting minutely as if aligning her body with a new purpose, and a small voice inside prompted her to rise, her heels meeting the hardwood with quiet authority, the cafe's soft jazz mixing with the city's distant traffic, and she moved toward the door, hand brushing the pocket of her blazer where she had stashed her notebook. The pages filled with sketches of interior designs and plans for a future she hadn't yet claimed aloud, each step deliberate, each turn of her wrist a silent recalibration, and as she reached the doorway, the glass reflected the figure of Logan adjusting his cufflinks, the woman's laugh chiming in crisp, careless tones that only sharpened Madeline's awareness, and she noticed a flash in the reflection, a small flash of recognition and anger from a nearby stranger, a photographer capturing the moment without her knowing, feeding the narrative she was beginning to weave around herself. Then she exhaled, slowly, letting the air escape through her nose, shifting her gaze toward the valet standing by a gleaming car she hadn't seen arrive yet, keys dangling from his fingers, the scene unfolding in rapid succession like frames in a reel, and her inner monologue calibrated silently. Control begins here. As she slid past the threshold, the cafe's bell jingling again, each note punctuating the psychological power shift, and she stepped onto the sidewalk, the city morning pressing against her, the rain from the night before glistening on the asphalt, her coat brushing the water, heels clicking against puddles with precise rhythm. She moved toward her own vehicle parked a block away, fingers brushing her notebook, hand tightening around it, ready to strategize her next move, each moment stacking stakes higher, and in the reflection of the car window, she saw Logan's expression flicker with subtle unease, though he didn't know it yet, and she allowed a fraction of a smile to trace across her lips, a curve that spoke volumes without words, a signal of the impending reckoning. The audience left with the pulse of tension, the glint of morning light on wet pavement, and the unanswered question, what will Madeline do next as the city hums and waits with her? Not again, Madeline muttered, her fingers snapping the car door shut behind her as the chill of the morning wind brushed her face, scattering a few loose papers from her notebook onto the wet asphalt, each page a sketch of plans and ideas she had been nurturing quietly, the ink smudged by last night's drizzle, and she stooped to gather them, catching a glimpse of a black limousine gliding past, Logan's reflection visible in its tinted windows, his hand brushing the woman's arm inside, perfectly casual, and the sight drove a sharp assumption through her mind that he had intentionally used her card, a calculated humiliation designed to flaunt wealth she had unknowingly supported. She stuffed the papers back in her notebook, sliding it into the tote against her side, and decided immediately she would confront the situation, dialing her assistant while her high heels tapped rhythmically on the concrete, the sound punctuating the urgency of her decision. Check my account and flag any unusual transactions, she said briskly, voice carrying over the line and leaving no room for argument, her thumb brushing the screen for the mobile banking app as if to confirm her control, when a new alert popped up, a text from an unknown number. Meet me at Cross Designs at 11. Do not tell anyone. The timing was uncanny, forcing her to pivot instantly, A plan forming around the enigmatic instruction, and she could not ignore it. Heels clicking faster, coat collar raised against the breeze, the morning traffic humming past, windshield wipers streaking the view of a nearby Rolls-Royce showroom, the very model Logan had purchased, and she imagined the gleaming car inside, the leather, the chrome, the quiet audacity of it, and her mind raced, building the narrative of betrayal layered over opulence. She reached the elevator, button glowing under her fingertip, each ding a micro beat in the unfolding day, and she recalled a memory from 6 months prior, Logan promising a fresh start after the divorce, hand on her shoulder, the polished wooden paneling of their favorite restaurant glinting in the dim candlelight, and the irony twisted as she realized how literal his sense of ownership had been, a card still in her name, still tethering her to actions she had not sanctioned, and the elevator opened to the lobby of her design studio, light spilling in over concrete floors, sunlight bouncing off metal fixtures, and she stepped in, scanning for Nathaniel Cross, noting the absent figure but the envelope waiting on the reception desk, white with crisp edges, her name scrawled in black ink, the fold pressing into her palm like a challenge. She tore it open, revealing a single line. "Everything is not what it seems. Trust only your instincts." The words hit like a pinprick, twisting her understanding into something more complex, a subtle shift suggesting she had misjudged Logan's motives or someone else was orchestrating this, and the sound of a text ping pulled her attention back to her phone, a photo of Logan and the blonde inside the showroom, laughing, keys in hand, yet in the reflection of the glass she noticed a man in the corner, partially obscured, holding a camera, capturing their movements, a micro-reveal that suggested surveillance, someone else's plan weaving into her reality, forcing a reassessment of who was controlling the narrative. She put the envelope down, walking toward the sketching table, pencil tapping lightly on paper as if conducting a rhythm of strategy. Could it be a setup? She whispered aloud, the sound barely filling the spacious studio, eyes flicking toward the windows where city traffic flowed, reflecting in the glass like fragmented choices, and she felt the pressure build, a momentary hesitation in the pulse of her day, deciding instantly to send a precise message to her legal advisor. Freeze all pending charges until further notice, pressing send with a deliberate flick, and the consequence was immediate, a ping of confirmation bringing a modicum of control, yet the question remained, who was orchestrating the spectacle, and would Logan notice her subtle pushback as the morning hours stretched? Madeline moved to the drafting table, straightening a clean sheet of paper, the fluorescent light above slicing through the dim corners, casting long shadows that mirrored the tension rising in her chest. The city outside indifferent yet alive, and she prepared her mind for the next move, each action deliberate, each glance at the phone a silent query. What would the next signal be, and could she turn this misjudged humiliation into leverage before the day unraveled further? "I need to see this in person," Madeline muttered, snapping her notebook shut and tossing it onto the passenger seat of her sedan as she adjusted the rearview mirror. Catching the reflection of Logan Pierce laughing inside the Rolls-Royce showroom through the wet street window, the chrome wheels catching the morning sun in sharp glints, and she pressed the ignition, engine humming under her fingers, tires splashing through shallow puddles as she navigated downtown streets with precise urgency, the phone buzzing again with another alert, a calendar invite from Logan labeled lunch with Nathan Cross, a name she did not recognize but instinctively connected to the man she had seen in the shadowed corner of her studio yesterday, her thumb hovering over accept before deciding to ignore it, convinced it was a trap, and she leaned back, fingers drumming lightly against the steering wheel, the air conditioner blowing a faint chill across her forearms, when a horn blared from behind, jolting her and causing her to glance at the dashboard, a new overdraft notice flashing alongside the previous charges, the balance now clearly in the red, reinforcing her belief that Logan intended to push her into public embarrassment, and she veered toward a side street, the tires crunching over gravel, the brick walls of a narrow alley reflecting the late morning light in fractured patterns, the reflection of her own determined face in a puddle catching her attention, a silent affirmation of the plan she had been building since yesterday, eyes narrowing as she plotted the next move. She pulled into the lot outside a boutique design supply store, the bell above the door jingling as she entered, her heels clicking against polished concrete, and immediately noticed a folder left on the counter, manila edges protruding, stamped with her initials in black ink, the scent of fresh paper and printer toner filling the small space, and as she bent to pick it up, a text pinged from an unknown number reading, "Do not confront him yet. Wait until you see the car." The specificity shook her briefly, introducing a sliver of doubt she could not ignore, and she glanced toward the glass storefront, half expecting to see a spy or Logan's accomplice lurking, the sunlight glinting off a decorative chrome lamp that threw streaks across the patterned floor shadows. Shifting, and she realized she had no choice but to follow the instruction, her grip tightening on the folder, fingers brushing against a receipt tucked inside, detailing a payment to a high-end auto detailing service for the same Rolls-Royce, reinforcing her belief that Logan's indulgence was deliberate, yet a subtle smudge on the receipt suggested an unfamiliar signature, introducing the first crack in her assumption that he alone was orchestrating this. She stepped back outside, inhaling sharply the scent of asphalt and exhaust mixing with spring blooms from a nearby planter, and saw Nathaniel Cross leaning against the corner of the building, briefcase at his side, eyes hidden behind sunglasses, his presence both startling and grounding, and she hesitated, mind racing to decide whether this was a coincidence or part of the trap she anticipated, then dialed her legal advisor's number while maintaining eye contact with Cross, the ringtone vibrating through her pocket, creating a pulse that synced with her accelerating heartbeat, and as she spoke a terse, single-syllable sentence, "Freeze it all," she pressed the call button with intent, the consequence immediate, a confirmation ping on her phone giving her a temporary sense of control, yet she noticed Cross's hand lift subtly, pointing toward a black SUV approaching the showroom, the vehicle slowing, window tint catching the morning light, hinting at a new layer she had not accounted for. And in that micro-moment, her eyes met Logan's through the tinted glass, his expression frozen mid-laugh, a flicker of unease passing over his features, and Madeline realized she needed to act immediately or risk losing leverage, slamming her phone shut, opening the folder to reveal photographs of the showroom interior, Logan and the blonde, each frame marked with timestamp stickers, the realization hitting her that surveillance had been set, her own plan now tangled with forces she could not yet map. A horn honking again, tires squealing faintly, and she stepped back, notebook clutched under one arm, weighing whether to confront the showroom directly or retreat and recalibrate, the rain-slicked street reflecting distorted images of all three players, and she exhaled sharply, decision crystallizing, heels clicking against concrete as she began toward the entrance, the door handle cold under her touch, and the camera of her mind registering the shifting power dynamics, the immediate stakes and the unresolved question. How much of this had Logan orchestrated, and how much had she yet to discover as she stepped across the threshold into the showroom, the narrative teetering on the edge of chaos waiting for her. First move. "I cannot let this slide," Madeline muttered, yanking the glass door of the Rolls-Royce showroom open, the bell jingling sharply above her head as sunlight fractured across the polished marble floor, catching her reflection in the chrome fixtures, and she froze for a fraction of a second when she saw Logan Pierce kneeling beside the vehicle, hands adjusting the pristine leather seats while the blonde woman hovered with a forced smile, their laughter halted mid-gesture as eyes met hers, the sharp pivot in their demeanor twisting the room into a tense tableau. She stepped forward, the sound of her heels clicking echoing in the high-ceiling space, eyes narrowing on the keys still dangling in Logan's hand, and her fingers brushed the envelope in her tote where the photos and receipts waited, a reminder of what she had assumed, her mind spinning the theory that Logan had orchestrated every detail intentionally to humiliate her, reinforced by the gleaming car, the matching leather, the faint scent of new upholstery, all aligning with her belief that she had been the silent financier of their public display. A sales associate approached, clearing throat. "Do you need assistance, ma'am?" And Madeline waved them off subtly, not breaking her stride, letting the interruption fade as she moved closer, noticing the reflection of a third figure in the glass wall, someone she did not recognize capturing the scene on a small camera, introducing an unanticipated variable that made her pause, the certainty of her assumption wobbling, though not yet collapsing. She dropped the envelope onto the counter, fingers fanning the documents open as she spoke low, almost under her breath. "Freeze any transactions immediately," pressing the call button on her phone with a firm thumb, the chime of confirmation buzzing in her ear, a micro-victory, yet the stranger's lens caught it all, subtly shifting the balance, forcing her to act with even greater precision, eyes darting between Logan's posture and the blonde's fidgeting, a bead of sweat glinting at the temple of his former mistress, tension stretching the moment like a taut wire. She reached out, adjusting a decorative lamp on the counter, the clink of metal on marble a deliberate marker, then noticed a handwritten note slipped under the folder, curling slightly from the air conditioning, reading, Meet Nathaniel Cross before confronting him. And a flicker of doubt cut through her narrative. The man she assumed orchestrated everything now potentially a guide rather than an obstacle. Her phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number showing a map with a pinpoint outside the showroom. Timing stamped 10 minutes ago, forcing a rapid recalibration, and she stepped back toward the door, notebook in hand, heels tapping faster, the scent of wet asphalt outside mixing with the showroom's polished chrome. As Logan finally looked up, a shadow of confusion crossing his face, lips parting as if to question, and she met his gaze, eyes steady, voice clipped. "You are not in charge here anymore." Each word small but charged, shifting power, compelling him to retreat an inch, yet signaling an escalation. The blonde, now looking between them, her expression faltering. A sudden chime from the showroom phone made both of them snap their attention toward the reception, a reminder of the outside world still intruding, and Madeline seized the pause to step out into the lobby, notebook clutched under one arm, fingers brushing the map once more, plotting her next move as the doors closed behind her, leaving Logan frozen mid-motion, the key in hand, the car gleaming, the surveillance camera subtly swiveling, capturing the unfolding imbalance, and the question now hung in the air. Would she confront the vehicle and its occupants directly, or follow the cryptic instruction to meet Cross, a choice that could alter everything in the delicate power play she had just ignited, each possibility charged with risk, anticipation vibrating through the polished floor beneath her heels. "I have to find out now," Madeline muttered, stepping off the showroom threshold, the echo of her heels against polished concrete blending with the faint hum of the air conditioning, her hand brushing the edge of her tote where the envelope still pressed against her side, fingers curling around it as if seeking guidance. She glanced at the black SUV parked across the street, tires glinting under morning sun, and spotted a small card fluttering on the windshield wiper. Picking it up with a precise tug, revealing a printed address she did not recognize and a time stamp 2 hours from now, the subtle detail sharpening her assumption that someone else had orchestrated Logan's display, reinforcing her belief that she was being baited. Yet a faint smudge of ink on the card hinted at a rushed hand, introducing a hint of error in her assumption. She pocketed the card and began toward her sedan, the gravel crunching beneath her heels, and a notification popped up on her phone, an email from her bank flagged urgent, showing an attempted withdrawal to a private auction house for luxury vehicles, time-stamped minutes after the Rolls-Royce purchase, the sequence confirming her belief that Logan's intent was to drain her resources publicly, the concrete and steel surrounding her echoing with tension as she tapped the screen to place an immediate hold, sending a confirmation ping through the quiet morning, a momentary micro-victory. The engine roared to life under her hands, tires splashing through puddles left from last night's rain as she maneuvered through traffic toward the mysterious address, the GPS route overlaying the city map, and she noted a new flash. A billboard with a familiar logo from a design firm she had never visited, juxtaposed against the text in the email, creating a sense of urgency that pushed her to accelerate slightly, the engine whining with controlled intensity, her knuckles white against the steering wheel. Arriving at a discreet warehouse, the metal door reflecting shards of sunlight. She noted a man in a dark coat adjusting security cameras near the entrance, the flicker of lens catching her attention, heightening the stakes, and she pushed the door open, the clang echoing like a gunshot, entering a space filled with architectural models, blueprints strewn across tables, the scent of fresh ink and polished wood cutting through the air, Nathaniel Cross stepping from the shadows, briefcase in hand, a single glance indicating recognition. Yet his slight hesitation suggested an unanticipated variable. She set the envelope down on a table, flipping open the folder to reveal photographs of Logan at multiple dealerships with the blonde, the timestamps precise, a new layer of tracking she had not anticipated, and she whispered, "He has been moving faster than I thought." The words sharp and decisive, but the sudden beep of a scanner near the entrance startled her, the security system showing a live feed of someone entering the lot behind the warehouse. A figure she could not immediately identify, forcing her to react. She grabbed her phone, fingers hovering over a pre-written message to her legal advisor while shifting to intercept the intruder's line of sight, eyes darting toward Nathaniel for confirmation, his subtle nod allowing her to proceed, yet each action amplified exposure, the hum of electronics and the faint whir of ventilation making her senses taut, and as she stepped to adjust a model on the table, she noticed a folded note beneath it, written in Logan's handwriting stating, "Do not trust appearances," the implication striking her suddenly, the neatly printed images juxtaposed against the handwritten caution introducing doubt in her narrative, suggesting her assumption that Logan acted alone might be flawed, and that a larger scheme was unfolding. The warehouse door rattled slightly from outside, a shadow shifting in the corner, and Madeline froze, notebook clutched tightly, the reality of being observed pressing in, each heartbeat echoing in the cavernous room, the confluence of timing, surveillance, and human error forcing an immediate decision. Confront, retreat, or recalibrate, with the immediate pressure and the new revelation of Logan's possible manipulation hanging heavy, leaving the next move pregnant with risk and consequence. "I cannot wait any longer," Madeline whispered, slamming her hand against the cold metal door of the warehouse, the echo bouncing sharply across the concrete walls as she stepped inside, her eyes immediately catching the scattered blueprints and architectural models across the tables, each edge glinting under the fluorescent lights, and she noticed the folder she had left earlier now slightly ajar. Pages shifted as if disturbed by a hand she had not seen. She bent to inspect, fingers brushing across a small envelope tucked between sketches, revealing a set of photographs showing Logan Pierce entering the private auction house minutes before, confirming her belief that he was racing ahead to undermine her control, yet a folded note hidden beneath suggested another presence, the handwriting unfamiliar, casting doubt on her initial assumption that Logan acted alone. She snapped the folder closed, moving quickly toward her car in the narrow lot outside, gravel crunching beneath her heels when her phone vibrated violently, a text from the bank showing an attempted withdrawal of over $50,000 to an offshore account, the immediate consequence forcing her to act, fingers tapping rapidly to initiate a freeze, only to receive a second notification that a transfer had already been processed, leaving her with an irreversible financial loss, her stomach twisting as the engine roared to life under her hands. She pressed the pedal cautiously, tires splashing through puddles, headlights reflecting the warehouse across the street, when a black SUV pulled alongside her vehicle, windows tinted, engine idling, the driver staring impassively, introducing new stakes and a sense of being tracked, and she swerved slightly to avoid collision, notebook clutched under her arm, her mind racing to recalibrate her plan. Arriving at the auction house, the glass doors reflected the morning sun, and she froze momentarily at the sight of Logan inside with the blonde, gesturing toward a display of rare vehicles, their laughter casual, masking the tension she had anticipated, and she realized that confronting them here would expose her without immediate leverage. She pulled the folder from her tote again, scanning the photographs, noticing timestamps and license plates, each detail a thread of evidence, when a sudden horn from the lot outside caused both Logan and the blonde to glance toward the windows, a sharp distraction, the reflection catching Nathaniel Cross moving discreetly behind the display, signaling potential assistance but also adding a layer of unpredictability. She muttered under her breath, "This is my only chance." Stepping forward toward the lobby, notebook in hand, and a valet approached, offering keys for a display vehicle, which she accepted to create proximity, yet the movement drew the attention of security cameras, blinking red lights recording every step, escalating risk. She felt the weight of the irreversible financial hit pressing on her chest, a misjudged assumption forming that Logan was counting on her to panic and act recklessly, and she approached a display, fingers resting on the polished hood of a vintage car, thinking of how to maneuver subtly, when a small envelope slid from the dashboard, landing at her feet with a soft thud, stamped with her initials, the final reveal shocking her. A receipt from an earlier transaction she had not authorized, time-stamped minutes before her bank freeze, suggesting that someone else had manipulated events in parallel, forcing her to pause, heart hammering, calculating immediate next steps while realizing that the situation had grown exponentially more complex, stakes higher than ever, and the next move would determine whether she could regain control or risk complete exposure. "He is not acting alone," Madeline whispered, slamming the folder onto the table, the echo bouncing across the warehouse ceiling as sunlight streamed through the high windows, glinting off scattered blueprints and reflecting in her eyes, and she noticed a faint watermark on one photograph she had not seen before, the subtle logo of Cross Designs, suggesting a layer of orchestration beyond Logan Pierce. Her pulse quickening as the realization reshaped her assumptions. She stepped toward the models on the side table, adjusting a miniature car, and a small envelope fell from the shelf above, opening on the floor to reveal a receipt with Nathaniel Cross's signature, a detail shifting her belief that Logan had orchestrated everything solo, and she bent to pick it up, fingers brushing the polished wood, Her mind racing through the new implication. Her phone buzzed, a new text flashing. Meet outside. Now. The timestamp was immediate, and without hesitation she dashed toward the warehouse door, heels clacking against the concrete, the envelope clutched tightly, and as she exited, the glare of the sun bouncing off puddles startled her, a shadow moving across the lot, someone else present she had not accounted for. She slipped behind a parked vehicle, adjusting her tote to hide the folder, scanning the glass doors of the auction house across the street, and noticed Logan speaking with a sharply dressed man gesturing toward a black sports car, her prior assumption of his solo scheming faltering under this new observation. A gust of wind slammed a loose metal shutter against the side of the building, startling her and drawing Logan's attention in her direction, and she ducked behind the SUV, breath tight, realizing exposure could happen in an instant, fingers trembling slightly as she typed a quick message to her assistant. Monitor all activity. Confirm identities. Pressing send with deliberate force. A horn honked from the lot, echoing between buildings, and a security camera light flicked red, recording increasing stakes as she realized she was being observed while her awareness of allies and adversaries remained incomplete. Stepping around the SUV to gain a better line of sight, she crouched briefly, notebook pressed against her chest, and caught a glimpse of Nathaniel moving between shadows, subtly signaling her to wait, the gesture both reassurance and warning, heightening her focus. Logan glanced in her direction, adjusting his cufflink, the blonde smiling, and Madeline felt the weight of misjudged timing, realizing any misstep could confirm her vulnerability, and she tightened her grip on the envelope, deciding to hold her position rather than approach immediately, the choice freezing her actions but keeping options open. A gust of wind lifted another document from the folder, scattering it toward the lot, the paper landing near the approaching SUV, forcing her to lunge forward and retrieve it, the movement exposing her silhouette briefly, and Logan's eyes flicked in her direction, a micro shift in awareness, a subtle power change as he noted her presence without comprehension of her knowledge. She exhaled sharply, setting the papers back into place, and a message flashed across her phone screen. They know you are watching. Act now or risk losing advantage. The notification shaking the careful equilibrium she had maintained, the threat immediate and invisible, tension spiking as she realized the layered complexity of the situation. As she crouched behind the SUV again, observing Logan, Nathaniel, and the unfamiliar figure in the lot, the interplay of glances, gestures, and objects forced a new question into her mind. If Logan was only part of the plan, what role did Nathaniel play, and how far ahead had he anticipated every step, leaving her calculating next action under extreme pressure, the stakes higher than she had ever experienced, and the scenario unresolved, teetering on the edge of exposure and revelation. I will decide, Madeline said sharply, pushing open the heavy glass doors of the auction house, the metal frame rattling under her hand as sunlight poured across the polished marble floor, casting long streaks of brightness that fractured across the rows of vintage vehicles, and she froze for a moment, spotting Logan Pierce and the blonde, their attention drawn momentarily to a silver convertible glinting under the display lights, keys in hand, the chrome trim catching every reflection. She adjusted her tote, fingers brushing the folder pressed against her side, and a text pinged from Nathaniel Cross. Wait for the opening. The timing forced her to hesitate, every heartbeat echoing in the cavernous space as she stepped forward cautiously, scanning the crowd, noticing a new detail. A valet badge lying on the floor, stamped with Cross Design's emblem, suggesting Nathaniel's presence had been deliberate, orchestrated to intersect with her actions. She breathed in sharply, heels clicking against the marble, her gaze fixed on Logan as he gestured toward the blonde, whispering something she could not hear, and the subtle movement of his hand brushed against the keys, amplifying the urgency in her mind, the assumption that he controlled every angle now challenged by the evidence of Nathaniel's coordination. She pivoted toward the nearest display, fingers brushing the hood of a deep blue coupe, feeling the cool metal pulse beneath her touch, and noticed a small envelope wedged beneath the wheel, torn edges revealing a receipt for the Rolls-Royce detailing an earlier inspection appointment she had not authorized. The new layer of manipulation forcing her to make an immediate decision. Approach the car directly or use Nathaniel's guidance, both options carrying risk. A soft chime from her phone drew her attention to a new message. He is watching, but do not rush. The calm authority of the text contrasted with the tension building in the room, and she realized Nathaniel's presence offered leverage without rescuing her, placing the choice fully in her hands. Stepping closer to the convertible, she set down her notebook, adjusting her jacket, the air conditioning causing a slight flutter in the papers on the table, and Logan's eyes flicked toward her, brief recognition passing in a glance, a subtle shift in power as he noticed her composure and confidence, the blonde's expression tightening, uncertainty creeping into the previously casual demeanor. She inhaled, fingers brushing the folder again, and whispered under her breath, "I am not theirs to manipulate." Stepping past the display with controlled determination, her movements precise, deliberate, each step signaling ownership of the space, the polished floor reflecting light and shadows dancing with her resolve. A faint metallic click echoed from a nearby display case, drawing her gaze to a set of keys on a velvet cushion, the lighting catching the silver edge, Nathaniel subtly gesturing from the shadows, eyes calm, commanding but not interfering, providing an unspoken anchor for her dignity. She reached the main floor, notebook in hand, heels echoing, scanning Logan and the blonde, noting the slight tremor in his posture as her presence asserted itself, the subtle balance of attention and control shifting, and she finally realized that the orchestration had always been layered, that Logan's actions alone did not define the stakes, and the soft ping of a phone alerted her to another message. Now is the moment, the timing forcing her to make a final choice, moving toward the silver convertible, the reflective surface catching the gallery lights, her decision immediate, irreversible, and as she stepped fully into the open space, the polished chrome glinting across her determined eyes, a new realization struck. The situation was more intricate than she had believed, every move observed, every gesture consequential, and the auction house seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her next action to tip the balance. "This ends now," Madeline whispered, stepping into the center of the auction floor, the polished marble reflecting the morning sun in sharp streaks across the vintage vehicles, and she set the folder down deliberately on the hood of the silver convertible, letting the papers fan open, each photograph catching the light, Logan Pierce looking up, surprise flickering across his face, while the blonde froze mid-gesture, keys dangling loosely in her hand. She lifted her chin, heels clicking against the marble with steady rhythm, eyes meeting Logan's, voice low but precise. "You do not control this space." The words sharp, reclaiming power, and she reached out, adjusting a chrome side mirror on the display car, the metallic click underscoring authority, signaling she was fully present and in command. Nathaniel Cross stepped forward from the shadows, the sunlight glinting off his cufflinks, calm and composed. His presence alone communicating support without interfering, a subtle reinforcement of her dignity as he gestured toward the papers on the hood, allowing her to decide the next move. His posture commanding yet deferential. A phone ping drew her gaze, a text showing a confirmed freeze on all unauthorized transactions, the instant ripple effect visible. On Logan's face, the blonde shifting uneasily beside him, the tension compressing the space between them, forcing immediate decision. Madeline slid the folder back into her tote, stepping closer to the convertible, her fingers brushing the smooth leather, and she noticed a small envelope tucked into the seat seam, revealing a receipt signed by Nathaniel, confirming his subtle orchestration, reshaping her understanding that Logan's display had been only part of a layered plan. Yet she maintained poise, choosing to engage directly rather than retreat, each step deliberate, the polished floor reflecting light and shadows like fractured choices. Logan's eyes narrowed, lips parting slightly, gesturing toward the blonde, whispering something inaudible, and Madeline responded by adjusting the car keys in her own hand, a subtle micro-shift signaling control, while Nathaniel's quiet nod reinforced her autonomy, their combined presence a silent declaration of her regained authority. A bell above the entrance jingled as a valet arrived, stepping lightly across the marble, adding tension, while outside, sunlight glinted off the black SUV she had observed earlier, a shadow crossing the floor as someone approached the building, introducing an unresolved threat, the energy of anticipation thick in the air. She exhaled slowly, adjusting the jacket sleeve, eyes scanning Logan, the blonde, and Nathaniel, registering the interplay of glances, gestures, and reflections, each detail informing the next action, and she made a decisive step toward the exit, notebook under arm, posture unyielding, heels clicking with authority, the polished floor mirroring the determination in her stride. Logan's expression tightened, a flicker of hesitation crossing his face as he realized the public observation of her composure, Nathaniel's subtle positioning reinforcing her control without speaking, the power fully shifted yet balanced, as Madeline reached the front doors, pushing them open. to let sunlight flood her path, the gleam of the city beyond reflecting in the mirrored surfaces, and just as she stepped out, a small envelope slid from the convertible's dashboard, fluttering to the floor with a soft thud stamped with Logan's initials, a final subtle revelation hinting at one last layer of orchestration she had yet to uncover, leaving her poised in the sunlight, notebook in hand, standing tall, fully in command of her dignity, yet the shadow of uncertainty lingering at her feet, a cinematic pause that promised more intrigue beyond the polished street and glimmering vehicles.